Awesome. Okay. Welcome everyone to our April 2026 Housing Commission meeting. And I think no one has signed up for public comment, but if there's anyone who's present who would like to speak during public comment on items not on the agenda, please let us know now. Okay, hearing none, we'll move to our first agenda item, which is approval of the notes. Any changes or edits to the notes?
I move we adopt the notes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any objection to approving the notes? Hearing none, they are approved. Thank you. And our next item is the housing choice voucher update.
Nice to meet everybody. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes.
Yes, please.
All right. So thank you for having me. We have an update coming for our housing choice voucher program, commonly called Section 8. My name is Caleb. I'm the executive director of the housing choice voucher program. Started in June last year, so about a year in. This project has been almost a year in the works, and we're working our way through making sure that the update is accessible to everybody. The overall document is roughly about 1,100 pages. So to simplify it, we've put together a presentation to summarize major changes. And if at any point you have questions, please let me know. So the housing choice voucher is really governed by its administrative plan. The administrative plan has all of our procedures, all of our policies that aren't covered in HUD's statutes or regulations that fund this program. And part of the regulations is that we have a plan that specifies all those gray areas. So these policies include things like our waiting list, eligibility criteria, everything a family needs to do when they're finding or leasing a unit, how we handle inspections, and portability for families that want to move into or out of the area, or folks who want to move into Arlington or move within Arlington. The plan covers denials, terminations, so folks that are either prevented from joining the program for various reasons or terminated from the program for various reasons. It covers our special programs, including the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program, the Family Unification Program, our Mainstream Program, which is a program for persons with disabilities. And it covers some programs that we may eventually get, like the Foster Youth Initiative. We also cover how we update our payment standards, our fair housing requirements, and all the definitions used throughout the program. So we're doing an update for a few reasons. This is a comprehensive update. It covers all of our governing policies. We updated this primarily at the start to meet the requirements for the Housing Opportunity Through Modernization Act, or HOPMA. Congress passed this in 2016. And HUD put out the final rule around 2023. There's certain statutory changes regarding inspections, regarding assets for families, income for families that we have to incorporate now. Some will come on later. For the parts that start later, we have 2 chapters in this plan. There's an A and a B. An A is what we do now. A B is what we are going to do once we are required to follow through with HOPMA. We wanted to streamline and kind of reconcile all of our policies. The current plan has been updated multiple times over the last maybe 10 to 15 years. So we really want to make a comprehensive update to make sure everything aligned. And we wanted to allow for some additional flexibilities for the voucher program. This HOTMA update allows us to do things like streamlined annual reexaminations for families with Social Security income or SSI, pension income, things like that. It also allows us to do some things that make things easier on families, lowers the barriers to access the program, like allowing virtual briefings. So does anybody have any questions so far?
Actually, I had a question.
Of course.
Is your briefing going to cover any of the strategic plan information that came out, I think from the process last year or the year before?
Oh, for the PHA plan? So we just
Yes.
finished up our PHA planning a couple months ago, and we're working our way through it. I can provide you some updates on that if that's okay. Once we're done with
Sure.
this,
Yep,
we
that's
received
great.
thank you. We received a lot of public comment on it, which was really great. So, but yeah, I will make sure to get that to you right after this.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. So what did HOTMA do? HOTMA really streamlined the functions for these HUD-funded programs, um, but the timeline for adopting it is spread out and in certain cases has been pushed back. For example, there's a change in our inspection protocols that was supposed to start last year, got pushed this year, and now it's pushed back again until February of 2027. So we have the policies in in our updated administrative plan, but they have yet to go into effect. This covers not only the voucher program, but public housing programs around the country. It covers the multifamily Section 8 or new construction programs, 202s and 811s. It makes changes to asset limitations, which were not a thing in the voucher program before. It changes the income calculations a little bit by defining things a little bit more strongly. It also updates the deductions and expenses, which expense deductions, which haven't changed in a significant amount of time. For example, elderly families usually would receive a $400 deduction, which is what they've received since roughly the 90s. So it actually starts increasing it over time. It changes how we do our reexaminations, what verifications are required. So most of the plan has stayed the same. Um, we wanted to make sure that if something was working well, we didn't change it. And then any of the significant changes that we did were based around either statute or around ways to make things easier for families. So one of the big things is, as you're probably aware, HUD has made several changes to fair housing, including how they want us to handle things with families with limited English proficiency. Our plan preserves current protections and actually aligns us more closely with Department of Human Services policies. So in terms of applications and screening, there were a few major changes. One is that we have an online application platform to verify preferences and have people make their applications for families to update any information. We've incorporated that throughout the plan for families to be able to go online and make the changes that they want rather than having to come in or mail a form in or wait for somebody to manually update things. Um, we also are allowing eligibility and preference reviews when a family is actually placed on the waiting list, which we're hoping to open sometime in the next couple of years. Right now, we accept families on the waiting list and verify eligibility and preferences when they are going to be admitted to the program, which is incredibly difficult given the length of time that it can take to move from the waiting list to admission. So for somebody to go back 2, 3 years and gather documentation of a homeless preference, for example, really isn't practical. So we're updating that to collect that information up front. We removed some fingerprinting requirements that were impractical. We HUD requires us to do a criminal background check for families being admitted to the program for things like sex offender status and production of methamphetamines on the grounds of federally assisted properties. In the original plan, we could request fingerprints, but be perfectly frank, we never have, and it's incredibly hard for families to get those fingerprints done and submitted. So we removed those requirements. Um, we also updated some definitions. Nothing has really changed in far as how we treat families, foster children, foster adults, but we wanted to make sure that they were more clearly defined. And that was one of the things at HOTMA was that it would actually make us clearly define those definitions. In terms of our waiting list and preferences, the biggest change here is that we currently only have one wait list. The waitlist covers our tenant-based assistance and our property-based or project-based assistance. In the regulations, it's called project-based. No one really cares for the term. We're calling it property-based. where the subsidy is tied to a particular property. We've run through when we inherited Culpeper from Fairfax, we got a waiting list for their property-based voucher program there. And we're running through it very rapidly. So we wanted to split out these waiting lists so that families could pick whether they want to be on one list, the other, or both. So if this when this change happens, we'll have a property-based wait list and a tenant-based wait list. Our plan is to do outreach to everybody on the current tenant-based list, request information if they want to be added to a separate property-based list first. Yes, sir.
Would the property-based be our CAF units?
No, these are it's a separate subsidy. So we can project base or property base up to 20% of our housing choice vouchers if funding's available. This year we were supposed to have our funding a few days ago. Unfortunately, HUD still has not provided what that final funding will be.
Right.
So,
So,
but we
but where
can.
would those project-based go?
So there's a couple different ways we can award. One is with an RFP with a competition, anywhere within Arlington County. The other way is if somebody has been awarded tax credits or AHIF, for example,
Okay,
we
that's
can
what I'm
use
getting
them.
at. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
no worries. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
can use those competitions as a substitute for an RFP. So, um, so it'll be open. We're hoping to open it up as much as possible, but we have to see where the funding is first, before we get to that point. So, um, the other thing that we've updated are our preferences. Most of these have stayed the same. The only couple that were added as point preferences are the emergency housing voucher. So the emergency housing voucher program was funded under the American Rescue Plan back in 2021. And the program is sunsetting. Funding for the program is running out. And as we transition, we need a way to transition those families to a more stable platform for assistance. So families will be in the current EHV program will be able to get a preference to move onto our wait list. The other thing that we have is in case we currently have only 10 state rental assistance program families. And in the event that anything happens, we wanted to make sure that we were able to transition those families to a voucher as well. There's no evidence that there's going to be any changes or anything like that, but thinking ahead, we wanted to make sure that we could give those families a priority as well if we needed to. Yes, sir. Ma'am.
The state rental assistance program, is that a leftover from COVID or what is that program?
So SRAP actually runs through the state of Virginia. It runs very similar to the voucher program, but it's a separate grant. So we recently received our allocation for the next 12 months. That'll start July 1st. So at this point, we actually the program is in really good shape. But we only received 10 of these SRAP vouchers from the state. So we administer on their behalf. But so they're separate from the HCB program, but it's a very, very similar program. So um, it's just funded through a DBHDS. So we've also added a couple of absolute preferences. These would bump people to the top of the wait list. The first one that we're adding is our moving on strategy. What moving on does is it views housing assistance as kind of a continuum of housing. So from folks moving from shelter to supportive housing to vouchers, moving from higher support needs to lower support needs. What this preference will do is allow us to move up to 10 families from the PSH programs, from permanent supportive housing, locally or state funded, to the Housing Choice Voucher Program if they have less needs, freeing up some spots for folks that have more serious supportive needs. We've also increased the number for catastrophic circumstances. Previously, it was 10. We're increasing it to 15. These are for things like natural disasters, fires, building, is condemned for some reason. Something that we can admit families quickly if we ever have to move fast. And then finally, one thing that we're required to do under HOTMA HUD has always recommended that we have policies for what happens if we ever receive insufficient funding from Congress and have to remove families from the program to deal with that. We've added an absolute preference for those families. If we ever have to take anybody off, they go immediately to the top of the wait list. So hopefully that will never happen. But again, just planning ahead just in case. We did some
Can
minor
you
changes.
explain a little bit?
Sure,
Oh, sorry.
that's
Can
okay.
you explain a little bit how the current wait list works? You said, like, if someone's been on the wait list for a while, they have to go back and get documentation from years ago. Is that right?
So in the event that they have claimed a preference, for example, that they were living in Arlington at the time they applied, they would have to have some sort of evidence that shows that they qualified for that preference. So this way we can collect that stuff up front so they don't have to try and chase it down later.
Got it. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, makes it a lot easier for everybody involved.
I bet.
Um, yeah, it's hard for families, especially if it was somebody that was homeless at the time or experiencing homelessness. You know, if they don't necessarily have documentation from a shelter that they can carry with them everywhere, it's hard for them to necessarily go back and get it, especially if it was in another area. So trying to make things a little smoother.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
All right. The only real minor changes that we've made for briefings, voucher issuance, and extensions, we wanted to allow virtual briefings, and this was based on feedback from families with children, especially working families. It's really hard for them to arrange for childcare and take off of work to come in for, a 30-minute briefing in the middle of the day. So what we're allowing is a virtual briefing. They can arrange it with our staff. We run it very similar to this, fill everybody in so that we can make it easier. They don't have to try and take off of work or anything like that. For families with limited mobility, it makes things a little bit easier as well. We also updated our voucher extension policy. We wanted to make sure that we were consistent across everybody. And this way we have a consistent extension policy for when folks are struggling to find housing for whatever reasons. In most cases, it's folks need a reasonable accommodation. In other cases, it's that they struggle with credit or other barriers. So it gives us a little bit more time to work with them if we really need to. And then we also had to address, just like with the preferences, any vouchers that were pulled back due to insufficient funding. This would only happen under direction from HUD. It would never be something that we would decide to do. So um, in the event of a significant shortfall, HUD can require us to pull vouchers back off the street that have been issued. So we just wanted to update the policy to explain how we would handle that. Those families, once they've been issued a voucher, they would receive first dibs on a voucher. Yes, sir.
Just you may be getting into this now, but how often do you have it where vouchers have to be pulled back because of insufficient HUD funding?
Fortunately, so far we've never had it. So we're just hoping to never ever have to deal with it. But if we don't have it in the policy up front, then we have to go and take the policy out for 45-day notice and comment period, everything else. So we just wanted to make sure we had it in there and covered. So there's a handful of other HOTMA related changes. They've clarified their full-time student rules for the voucher programs. Traditionally aged, college, university level students have never been able to receive housing choice voucher assistance or other Section 8 assistance. HOTMA updated that. They actually, under the previous rules, things like public housing were excluded nationwide, so they've updated that. And they also explained the treatment of financial aid and expanded on that as things have changed quite a bit since the student rule went into place years ago. Um, there's also a clarification on earned income, especially for periodic or non-recurring. This definition was updated as we've seen an increase in families working for things like DoorDash or working for Uber or Lyft or any of those kind of anything in the gig economy. Typically, it would be included, but they wanted to make sure that the definition was expanded on. The Earned Income Disallowance Program has already sunsetted, so we've removed that from our policy. The last person on that program would have sunsetted back in 2024. The statutory requirement for it was sunsetted. And then there was some updates to income exclusions. Basically, HUD changed when HOTMA went through Chapter 24 of the Federal Regulations, Part 5 covered all of the income inclusions and exclusions, and we've updated to match those. We also look at the treatment of assets. There's some updates to lump sum additions. So say a family wins the lottery, it talks about how we treat that. And it's updated how we handle trusts and ABLE accounts. Previously, HUD never addressed ABLE accounts. And as they become more common, we want to make sure that we had a definition. They're excluded, but we want to make sure that it was defined in the policy. In terms of
I have a question on income. Oh, okay, you're doing it now. I'm interested in the recertification process. Are you going to be covering that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, it updates a little bit with our reexaminations and inspections. So on the inspection side, HUD is shifting from HQS or housing quality standards to what they call Inspire. This is going HUD-wide. Every federally funded housing program will shift to that. Our date to implement that has been pushed back to February of 2027. They're supposed to implement on public housing and Section 8 new construction, I think in October. So, but for us, it won't start until February. We have the updates ready to go, the systems ready to go, but we have to wait until they tell us we can do it. So, we did do a couple of other updates to the inspection process. This will allow us to do remote video inspections if we ever have to. For example, the most common item that fails on our inspections is there's no batteries in the smoke detector. So rather than send somebody back out, we can actually have the resident just send us a video. Okay, yep, this was fixed. Batteries in there. We're good to go. Landlord can send us a video, and they can do it right through our landlord portal. So makes things a little bit easier. They don't have to arrange for somebody to be there to let somebody in. So it makes things a little easier on families and on the property managers. The other thing that this will allow us to do is shift to biennial inspections. We have a lot of analysis to do on whether that'll happen or not, but instead of inspecting every property every year, we would be able to inspect some properties every 2 years. So, for landlords that are maintaining their units well and taking care of that, we'd be able to spread those inspections out a little bit more. In terms of reexaminations, there was one mandatory thing that HUD required, and it was that if a client revokes their consent forms. Right now, when a client signs off on consent for the program, we transmit their name and information to a system called PIC, the Public Housing Information Center. It has all of the information on the income calculations for the families. But what it also does is it sends their name and social security number to the EIV system, which cross-references IRS and Social Security Administration. And it allows us to get income information. So for families with things like just Social Security income, it makes it really simple. We can pull that information down. We see any changes. We can get that. But that system also monitors for changes in job situations. So if a new job is reported, it will pop up in there. So HUD was concerned that if a family revoked their consent, they don't really have a way of pulling them out of that system. So if that happens, they have to come off the program. There are some changes to the timing of interim re-exams. Under our current policy, we require everybody to notify us for any change in income. In this case, we would only make a change if the income changes by 10% or more. So for families that are working and pick up some extra hours, it's not as serious if they pick up those extra hours and gain a little bit of extra income. We want to encourage that. So the other thing that it allows is streamlined re-exams. And what the streamlined re-examinations are is for families with 90% or more fixed income. So families on disability, Social Security, pension income, we only have to work with them every 3 years to update everything. The other years we can work with them on updating medical deductions or things like that, but we don't have to go through the entire process every single year. For Social Security, we know what the COLA is going to be. We know how their income changes. We can just update that without having to bother anyone.
Hey, Caleb, how long is the inspection, the recertification process? What's your experience?
So we start our current re-exam process 120 days out. Our first letter goes out to the families explaining what we need. There's an application involved. And they fill out their information, give us updates on job situation, family changes, things like that, as well as any documentation that we need to support the calculation. So if they're working, it would be pay stubs. If they have outside outside disability income, we would need, documentation of that. If they're driving for Lyft or Uber, we would need the documentation from that part. So we can gather that information starting at 120 days out. They have to have it to us no less than 60 days before the re-exam. So that gives us time to process, verify, work with them if there's any issues.
All right.
So-
Okay, I'm only saying that I'm gonna connect you with someone. I know of a company that can do that in 17 days.
Oh yeah,
All right, so
that'd be great.
and
Let me know.
technology, and some of the commissioners have heard me before, technology is really changing this, so this program will really work well. And I have a vested interest in it because I started working in this program at HUD in 1974 on the tenant-based voucher program. So I worked on it, and going on 55 years, it troubles me that this program is still limping along. It troubles me greatly that Congress passed HOTMA and it took 5 years to do the regulations. So I'm saying this on the public record. This is a good program, but both administrations at HUD have just given it not the dedication and need it does. And I am now convinced in my older age that technology will be the salvation for this program. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And just as a heads up, one thing we are shifting is we are opening up our online resident portal so they can submit documents online instead of having to mail it in.
Right.
Instead of, yeah, it's going to be pretty nice. We've been working with our landlords on it already. So they can submit rent increases, and very shortly we'll have online request for tenancy approval and HAP contracts. So we're working towards upgrading the tech to make things a little bit smoother. And frankly, it's easier for a lot of the families rather than having to try and drag information in or try to mail it in. The mail service is sometimes not as reliable as it was. So this way, we have an easier way for folks to do it. So the timeline should tighten up, but we do start a little further out than we otherwise would like to. But it just gives families some more time in case they have to chase down documentation too. We did update some information on audits and owner incentives. So we had to update our audit requirements to match 2 CFR Part 200. They reconsolidated a whole bunch of separate audit guidance across all federal programs. And this just aligns what we do with that, which we have to do anyway because every other federal grant has the same requirement. We currently don't have the funds to do the owner incentives. That's something we want to explore as the financial situation improves. But there are things that we could eventually do with that, including having a fund set aside for damages or what have you. We updated our extension policy for people searching with vouchers. Again, we had to update our treatment for vouchers pulled back. We actually put in policy our current practice regarding errors. If we discover an error that adversely impacted a tenant or a landlord, we make it right. So we work with them on that, and we wanted to make sure that was enshrined in policy too. And then there were some additional federal requirements that came out with HOTMA for the use of reserves. It's not anything that we are particularly concerned about because the limit is still pretty high since they're basing it on PHAs around the country, and there's some very large PHAs around the country. But we wanted to make sure we were aligned with the federal requirement on that. All right. So a couple of the other changes we've updated regarding any program fraud or repayment agreements or hearings. One of the updates in the HOTMA guidance and with some of the things that HUD is wanting us to do is that we can actually make referrals for prosecution for intentional program fraud and abuse. Before it was up to the individual areas, it was referred for local prosecution. It can be referred for local prosecution now, or it can be referred on the federal side, depending on what the situation was. So the other thing that we wanted to align was our policies on informal hearings and repayment agreements. We wanted to better specify how families are treated. The HUD regulations haven't changed since roughly about I think it was the 1984 original rule, but we wanted to clarify all the rights that families had, how they can request their information, and how they can provide information if they want to dispute if there's a termination. For repayment agreements, for minor errors, omissions, things like that, we wanted to clarify those policies too. We've also updated and codified how we handle payment standards and utility allowances. The utility allowances we update July 1st each year. These are based on the average cost of utilities for each type of unit. We currently contract with the company to obtain this information since they have access to stuff that we do not. There will be some changes coming this year. As you're probably aware, electrical and gas has increased quite a bit. So we're adjusting the allowances to account for that. The payment standards are based around what they call the fair market rents, and it helps set the limit on the maximum amount we can pay for a unit. We're in a required small area FMR area jurisdiction, so the FMRs are based on zip code rather than Arlington wide. And it's based on the unit size zip code. It's updated November of each year. And we also have these available, or we'll have these available on our website. All right. And then finally, there's some changes with the property-based vouchers. HOTMA made some changes with that, but it primarily has to do with the rental assistance demonstration program. And the only property we have with that is Culpeper. So it's nothing that will actually impact clients, but they wanted us to make sure that we updated the policies on things like contracts and stuff like that. So, and those are all of the major changes. Everything else, things will keep operating as they did. We're making some technological upgrades. If you're interested, yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Overall, what's your voucher? First of all, I commend you for your diligence and your knowledge in doing this stuff. It brings back memories. What is what's the voucher utilization rate for the county?
Right now it's around 1675. So we've
No,
got roughly
percentage. I'm thinking percentage wise.
so we're at 1675 out of roughly 1770.
Okay.
So we're not based since they changed it to budget based in 2005. We haven't been able to fully lease all of those units.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm seeing for fair market rents, do you see with potential rent prices slightly decreasing that there could be some more market rate units that would be obtainable with a housing choice voucher that now dip below the fair market rent number potentially?
Potentially. So the FMRs went down this year for this year. So we've adjusted the payment standards a little bit to account for that. Um, but where things get a little sticky is with the funding that we receive. There's an inflationary factor that's based on what the FMRs do. It's called the RFIF. And because ours went down, we don't receive an inflationary factor this year. It's estimated that we won't. We don't have final funding yet, but based on what the warnings that we've received, we wouldn't receive any inflationary factor. So it does have some impact on our funding for this year, but in general, where this gets a little interesting is about 80% of our voucher tenants actually reside in CAF units. So because they're so far below markets, rents tend to continue to increase. So there's kind of a weird interplay between the FMR and this RFIF. So we're working through that right now, but the hope is that families will be able to have more housing options as we move forward. So long story short, yeah, we're hoping that it'll actually open up more market rate units as well.
Caleb, question about something that you just said in
Mhm.
response to Joe's question. So,
Yeah.
are you saying we have approximately 100 vouchers that we could be utilizing, but folks can't find homes
Unfortunately,
in order to use those?
it's actually based on the funding that we receive. We don't receive enough funding to actually use those vouchers.
Okay, that makes
So
more sense. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
it's no worries.
Go ahead, Nikki.
Thanks. I just wanted to echo what Joe said. Congratulations on the modernization efforts. It sounds like it's going to
Thank
be
you.
really helpful to all stakeholders, and appreciate your thorough overview. On the biannual inspections, it sounds like you're still working through that, but is the idea like a landlord would have to sort of illustrate that they've had a good record? Not everyone would, automatically be eligible for a biannual inspection.
Correct. We would need to make sure that we have a set of criteria. So we're actually going through all of our inspections data, going back to try and figure out at least a pilot for this within the next year.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Caleb, can you talk a little bit about where things stand with mixed immigration status households? I know the administration was, I believe, if you have a household that has undocumented immigrants living in it, but you are a citizen, they want to kick you off of the voucher program. Or can you explain what's
Sure.
happening and also what's actually happened in Arlington to date related to this?
So historically speaking, if you had a family with mixed status, where some family members were eligible and other families didn't contend eligibility for whatever reason, there's, some citizenship reasons, there's some other reasons that family members might not contend eligibility, you were eligible to receive prorated assistance. The current proposed rule would remove all families with mixed assistance from the program. In terms of the voucher program, we have 14 families that would be impacted if that rule happens. Um, we're trying to find ways to work with them and find them other means of assistance if they need it. But long and short of it is, if HUD passes this rule, it would change the program for those families.
Well, that's awful. Hopefully that gets struck down by the courts if it does actually get implemented. Can you also talk about a little bit more about the changes to the housing choice voucher inspections? Because I believe we use the same process for our CAF inspections that CPHD does. So I know you said there were changes. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about you know, what those changes are to the inspection?
So the biggest change is that it shifts from being solely based on the unit to looking at the property as a whole. It's one thing if a tenant's unit will pass, but if the common areas are unsafe, if there's major problems outside of it, um, they want to take a look at those things too. And that's the biggest change with Inspire is you're looking at common areas, you're looking at the outdoor areas like parking lots if there's major tripping hazards, sidewalks if there's problems, in addition to the unit itself. So, as far as the actual changes for the unit itself, there's not anything too serious. Um, some updates to allow for local code variations or um, things with like mixed uh, smokes and CO2 detectors or CO detectors, those kind of things. So, but those are the big changes for us. The biggest thing is looking at the exterior of the unit, which is just not historically done unless it's a single family home. Sure.
Nikki?
Oh,
The rule, I should know this and I could look it up, but is it still in comment period or is it being finalized now?
so Inspire's been finalized. Um, or are you talking about the plan in general?
The HUD rule.
The HUD rule for Inspire is finalized. They just keep pushing back the implementation date. So
And Nikki, sorry, did you mean Inspire or did you mean the mixed immigration or mixed status rule?
The mixed status rule. Sorry,
that's
lots of rules.
yeah, that one's still in out for public notice and comment.
Got it. I will submit
So
comments. Thank you.
And Caleb, I had another question too. So during the strategic plan process for
mhm,
housing choice vouchers, they did public engagement and outreach to existing voucher holders. And one of the things that they found, and they published in the report where they talked about the
mhm.
feedback was that residents are reporting perceived or actual discrimination, and there's seemingly a lot of that happening. Um, can you talk about what the county is doing and what your relationship is with the Office of Human Rights to address, or the state fair housing office to make sure that people are referred to, folks who can investigate and take action to address any housing discrimination that's taking place?
Absolutely. So policy wise for us, when somebody comes to us, a client comes to us and reports that they're being discriminated against or retaliated against, we work with Office of Human Rights. We send the complaint to them to get investigated. We also work with the State Office of Fair Housing, which oddly is where anything that was historically referred to HUD is now being sent. So we work closely with them. If there's any documentation needed or anything like that, we're always happy to provide it. So, but we want to work with clients on those kind of things. Um, that's the bulk of where we work with it. Most of our clients, we receive a handful here and there, but that's usually our follow-up process is to work through the offices that do the enforcement.
Do you follow up with tenants to see after they've been referred or engaged in that process, like, were
Mhm.
you happy with the outcome? Like, was your issue resolved? Is that part of, like, do you guys have that kind of close the feedback loop?
We do talk to the tenants to see how they want to approach things. Typically, what we will see is if somebody is having a significant problem with the landlord, we work with them to get a voucher issued, to get them moved, make sure that they're happy from there. But from an enforcement end, we really rely on the Office of Human Rights or on the state fair housing.
Caleb, oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
Oh no, Nikki was first.
Uh, Nikki, I think, had it up from
Yeah,
before.
I think her hand's up from before.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead,
I
Brian.
yield to you, Brian.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, no problem. I was just wondering, Caleb, can you give me some data on just the uh, rate of incident where you've had to refer people to the Office of Human Rights because of these violations? It would be helpful just to know how many times that has occurred over, let's say, a year, just so we have a better understanding of the scale of the issue.
I can work on that. It's fairly sporadic from our end, so I can work on getting that kind of data together.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Caleb, what's your experience on the source of income? And I understand we have the state protection, but do you have problems with that locally?
Not typically. Most of the landlords have actually been pretty receptive to getting vouchers.
Good.
Where we do run into problems is with landlords that require 3 times the rent. We've had to talk to them about, making sure that voucher is considered. We actually changed our process. So now when we issue a voucher to a family, a lot of the landlords use automated systems to verify whether a family is eligible.
Mhm.
We changed our process based on that to show approximately what that voucher will cover so that they can input it into their system so it won't automatically deny the families based on their income.
Mhm.
We kind of reached that compromise after working with several landlords that use these automated systems. And that's actually helped cut down on the number of complaints that we've had regarding source of income discrimination. Because once in the grand scheme of things, if the unit is reasonable and the unit actually meets the program criteria, the family's only going to be paying roughly 30% of their income. So, as long as the landlords know that they're getting, what they're approximately going to get in half, it generally seems to work.
Okay, thank you.
The state issued guidance on that too, where they put restrictions on how landlords can use however many times the rent calculations, because it was essentially a backdoor way to discriminate against voucher holders.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason we put this together was that this way there's not really an excuse. They know exactly what they're going to get if the unit rents within reasonable limits.
Sounds good. Other questions, comments? Okay, well, thank you very much, Caleb. This was very
Thank you.
informative. Appreciate all
Happy
the
to,
updates.
happy to help. If you want to make any comments on the plan, it's available on our website, and we've got our public notice or public hearing coming up on May 1st.
Right.
So it'll be at Sequoia.
Right.
Sounds great.
Keep
Thank
up the
you.
good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
You too. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have the Walgreens site plan.
Yes, so I will turn it over to the applicant team first to do their presentation, and then I will go over the staff handout that was sent in advance. So I believe Zach Williams, can I pass it to you?
Yes, you can. Thank you, Alex. And good evening to members of the Housing Commission. My name is Zach Williams, a land use attorney with Venable. With me tonight is Cassie Guy with Rooney Properties and Steve Saff with Davis Carter Davis Carter Scott Architects. I do have a presentation. I know that you all have seen this before, but I can go over at a high level where we are now heading into the board hearing in April, which is coming up next week. So I can go ahead and share that. Just bear with me for a second. Okay. See that presentation? All right. Well, it's been a long road. This is the last stop before we get to the board next Saturday. So we're very excited to be where we're at. We had a great night on Monday with the Planning Commission, a very positive, constructive discussion. The Planning Commission voted to support the project. And after tonight, we'll be heading to the board decision. Cassie, before I kick off the presentation, you want to say a few words on behalf of Rooney?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Cassie Guy. I'm here with Rooney Properties. Some of you may have heard me give this spiel before, so I will keep it brief. I really just want to emphasize that we are a small, local, family-owned and operated developer. We actually are located about a mile up the road from the project site itself in Arlington. Being a small shop, grants us the ability to focus on high quality residential projects. And we are long-term holders, so we really focus on integrating into the community. And I think those are two really important factors when it comes to housing. So we're excited to be here tonight. Thank you guys for your time.
Great. Thanks, Cassie. So getting into the presentation, here's an overview of the project. Things have changed a little bit since the last time we all discussed this. The project still includes 300 units with 361 parking spaces. It'll have a first level of retail, about 7,200 square feet along Langston Boulevard. One of the aspects of the project that we're proud to have been able to accomplish was the 35.1% tree canopy coverage, which meets the goals of the plan. As far as housing and community benefits goes, this project is going to be delivering multiple tranches of housing benefits. The first is a AHIP contribution, a total AHIP contribution of just over $2.6 million. That is a combination of the base AHIP contribution as well as a contribution for bonus and GLUP density reflected in the goals of the Langston plan. In addition to that, the project will be delivering 19 CAFs on site, 13 at 60% AMI and 6 at 80% AMI. That is also in line with planned guidance. So walking through the presentation, the first thing I want to highlight is community engagement. The community engagement on this project has gone on for several years. It's been a great process. We've had 4 civic associations involved from day one, Lion Village, North Highlands, Cherrydale, and Maywood. We've had meetings with those civic associations individually and collectively over the course of the last few years. This slide reflects just the formal presentations we've had. There's been many, many more conversations, meetings, calls beyond this. But this just gives you a sense of the number of community engagement events we've had. And it's been a great experience. And I think we've made a lot of progress. And not everyone is happy, of course, but I think a lot of folks are pleased with the engagement that's gone on. So that's been great. Going through the design and architecture, most of this is the same. I'll highlight something that changed recently at the in a few slides here. But here's the looking at the building from Langston Boulevard, the retail frontage there as well at street level. Turning the corner, looking at the partially elevated parking garage there that'll be screened by an architectural screening as well as greenery and biophilia as well as trees. The pawn shop site, we've talked about this, will remain. Unfortunately, Rooney tried to get that site under control, but the National Pawn came in and exercised the right of first refusal, so that was not possible. That will remain, unfortunately. It's not part of this project. A lot of folks ask that question. That's why I mentioned it. Here's a bird's eye view of the building looking across Langston Boulevard, and you can also see on the right the off-ramp from 66, just giving you a sense of how the building will fit in on that corner. Looking down now on the building, this slide really highlights how the building fits into the site. It obviously has frontage along Kirkwood, has frontage along Langston, as well as the 66 side. You also can see that elevated courtyard. That'll be a private amenity space for residents. It will be extensively landscaped with trees, landscaping, and we'll have a pool as well as a sitting plaza area. That will be all on top of essentially a 3rd-story courtyard. Looking at the screening again, this is something that was changed, revised, improved throughout the project. What you see here is the culmination of work with staff and the community to create an attractive screening for the portion of the parking deck that's above grade. It'll be partially above, partially below grade, and this incorporated some of that biophilia and greenery to help to screen that area. This is just a little bit of a close-up view of what I was just talking about, bringing in that architectural screening design as well as biophilia along that edge. This is looking at the corner on Langston Boulevard. This is an entrance into the retail space. It is elevated. The reasons for that is it was a recent change to the plan requested by staff. The purpose was for flood proofing and flood protection for the building. As folks may know, this corner has had some history of flooding. And so, as I'll explain in a minute, we had to do a number of things here that were to deal with flooding, not caused by this project, but just because the project is located where it is. This is one thing that staff wanted us to do, to just keep that level of the building at an even grade. So it does create a step up, and you'll see in a minute that that also changed the way that we designed how these retail spaces will be addressed along Langston Boulevard. We've now created, well, Davis Carter Scott created what is called a loggia, and it is essentially an arcade style entrance to these retail bays. We did that primarily to deal with that grade change and that ramping, but we ended up really liking it. Actually, we think it will provide a better retail experience. You know, this area of Langston is very busy, it's very noisy, and this will provide a buffer from that and allow folks to interact with these retail spaces with a little bit more protection and a little bit more inviting pedestrian pathway here. Here's another view of the private amenity courtyard space. As you can see here, this will be, as I mentioned, very extensively landscaped. I mean, there is almost no portion of this that isn't going to have some type of landscaping or greenery other than the pool. This helps us to meet the tree canopy coverage. It helps us to get a lot of greenery and biophilia into the site. It also is the portion of the building that the folks in Lion Village will be looking down on. And so it provides a very just attractive courtyard space, obviously for private amenities for the residents, but also an attractive part of the building to look down on for folks in Lion Village. Here's the rendered site plan, just giving you another sense of how much greenery and landscaping is going to be occupying this site. You can see the building footprint there. That's the primary building tower. The rest of the site is gonna be landscaped in one form or another, and that was intentional. That's one of the goals in the plan, and we sought to meet that really from day one. Here's some renderings to give you a sense of how this is going to feel when this project is done. This is depicting the Plaza Park hybrid at the corner, the Kirkwood entrance to the building. This is something that was been designed many times and revised many times by staff with input from the community and others. And this is the final outcome, which we really like. We think it's going to be a great space, not just for building residents as they enter the building, but also for the public walking along this space. So we're happy with how this turned out. And it's, like I said, the culmination of really literally years of design effort. But beyond the park, we have designed the site so that all sides of the building present an inviting pedestrian experience. We want residents and the public to feel welcome here and safe as they walk around this site. And you can get a sense for that here with the landscaping and the pathways that will be going in here. Just on the other side of the building now, the Kirkwood side of the building, this is a combination of the overland relief that I'll talk more about in a second that we're adding to this site to deal with some of that flooding. And it's also showing the pathways, the greenery, where pedestrians can walk, both the public as well as residents of the building. Just another depiction of the sidewalk. That will be the sidewalk. I should mention all the streetscapes will be improved in accordance with the landscape plan, and I'm sorry, the Langston plan. And this is just another view of that frontage along Kirkwood. And one more here. So a big change that happened a couple months ago was to address some of the stormwater concerns and flooding concerns. We had to move the building back along the pawn shop side and up along the Kirkwood side to accommodate overland relief. We also are now going to be installing a box culvert that will help to take some of that water off the surface. It will accompany the existing 2 box culverts that currently exist under the pawn shop site. So now there will be 3 box culverts to take that water under high rain events through the site and get it past the site so it doesn't pool here as we've seen it do in the past. So this area where the culvert is going to provide overland relief and underland relief to make sure that that water gets to the site. And that is something that was studied for many, many months with staff. A lot of engineering went into this to ensure that this was the right thing to do for this area. While not directly related to housing, it does impact ultimately how the building came up and ended up. from a design standpoint, from a unit count standpoint. And this is a huge community benefit as well. This is the primary benefit along with the affordable housing that I already mentioned. And that concludes my presentation, and we're here for any questions you might have. Thank you.
And I will share my screen quickly to go over the staff handout that was sent in advance. Okay, so I think we all have an understanding of the location of the site, but it is in the Langston Boulevard area plan within those boundaries. So the applicant is proposing demolishing the existing Walgreens building and constructing 12-story building with 300 residential units and about 7,200 square feet of ground floor retail. As I mentioned, it is within the boundaries of the Langston Boulevard area plan. So below here, you'll see some housing policies that are being met with this proposal. These goals are similar to the Affordable Housing Master Plan goals, so won't go over each one. What I really want to touch on is the affordable housing program and explaining the 3 different pieces to it. So the first piece is the base affordable housing requirements, and so that will be a choice between a cash contribution of $866,000 or 6 on-site units or 9 off-site units nearby or 11 off-site units elsewhere in the county. And the method of satisfying that requirement is up to the applicant. So the second piece, and this one is the most complicated of the 3 pieces because it is something new, as this is the first market rate site plan to go through Plan Langston Boulevard or the Langston Boulevard area plan. So the plan recommends that the county attain at least 20% of the increased density for a GLUP amendment as on-site affordable units earning up to 60% AMI, and then an additional 10% of the increased density as on-site units for households earning between 60 and 80% AMI. So in most site plans that we've seen so far, there is just that 20%. This has an additional 10% of the increased density for the GLUP amendment being provided in units at 80% AMI. So the breakdown is 13 units at 60% AMI and 6 units at 80% AMI. And you can see the unit composition breakdown there on the screen. So there will be a total of 19 on-site CAFs for a term of 30 years. And then the third and final piece to the affordable housing is the bonus density piece. So requesting additional density above the GLUP maximum, and the applicant has proposed a cash contribution of $1.775 million to AHIF. So the Langston Boulevard area plan does state when additional increases in density are requested with redevelopment that the county attain at least 25% of the increased density attributed to affordable housing as on-site units affordable to households earning up to 60% of the AMI. Instead of providing on-site units, the applicant is proposing to provide a cash contribution, and the amount of cash actually constitutes 41% of the increased density value, which does exceed that 25% goal. So although providing a cash contribution instead of on-site CAFs for the bonus is a deviation from the Langston Boulevard area plan guidance, staff does support the proposal for a number of reasons. The first one of those reasons is leveraging. So that 1.77 million cash contribution is leveraged at the current county AHIF per unit subsidy average of 115,000 per unit. Then the county would be able to get about 15 units offsite at LIHTC, at a future LIHTC development. Whereas if we were to negotiate in this, we likely would have only gotten about 7 CAFs. So we're able to leverage more CAFs offsite. And then the second consideration here is the time, the affordability commitment period. So For standard site plans, on-site units are only 30 years, but in these 100% affordable LIHTC properties, we can do 75 years or even longer. So it does significantly increase the length of the affordability period when we leverage off-site. So real quick, I'll just mention a few of the Affordable Housing Master Plan goals that are being met here. So 9 2-bedroom CAFs on site for family size CAFs. There are adding 19 CAFs in the transit corridors. There will be 2 Type A accessible CAFs at this development, and then the project will also achieve LEED Gold. For racial equity, so based on the 2023 American Community Survey, they produced 5-year estimates for the racial composition of census tracts. And the data indicates that the census tract where the site plan is proposed has a proportionally larger white population than the county as a whole. And the data also indicates that there's a proportionally smaller percentage of the Black population, Asian population, and multiracial and combined populations than the county as a whole. And then there are also less Hispanic or Latino origin populations in the census tract where the development is proposed compared to the countywide population. So there's that in chart form. So the proposed 19 on-site CAFs will benefit and enable income-eligible families to live in an area of the county that is transit proximate and contains community amenities. In terms of who is burdened, the proposed units will be affordable up to 60% and 80% AMI and may not be affordable to households with very low incomes and who may not be eligible for housing grants or housing choice vouchers. For this reason, one could say that very low income households are missing from this opportunity as well, since these households may not have access to live in these units if they're still unaffordable. So the staff recommends approval of the affordable housing program, which meets a number of the county's affordable housing policies and includes 19 on-site CAFs as well as a $1.77 million contribution to AHIF. As well as the base contribution. So that is it for me, and happy to hand it over to the commission for questions.
Thanks, Alex. And thank you to the applicant and their representatives. Commissioners, questions, comments? I know we heard this in December as well. Go ahead, Joe.
I commend the applicant for their endurance on the site. The community engagement was extremely robust. Being a civic association president with one over here, I know 2 of the ones that were very actively involved. So kudos for that. I think having lived in that area before, I think it's going to be an asset to the community there. My only concern is access from the streets. Langston Boulevard is busy. Kirkwood is minimal. Where's the entrance to this development? Is it Langston or is it Kirkwood? The main entrance.
There will be 2 entrances. The sort of formal main entrance will be Langston, but we expect most residents will use Kirkwood.
And is that where the park is at that?
Yes.
It is, okay.
And Kirkwood, yeah.
Yeah, but not in a perfect world, I would have made that a circular drive over there instead of with the park so cars could go in. But I don't want to, I have no authority to make that happen. But in a perfect world, I think that would serve people better. I know people like parks and trees and stuff like that. But Kirkwood is a very narrow street. Langston is a very narrow street. And you're near I-66, and it would be a benefit for the community and the people that live there. But so be it. But congratulations on this development.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great development. I don't have any issues. I feel like you answered our questions last time. Appreciate updates on what has changed over the past few months. But any other questions, comments from commissioners? Okay. Um, then this is an action item since it will go to the county board next week. Do I have a motion to recommend that the county board approve the site plan and the affordable housing plan
Yeah,
associated with it?
I move that we recommend the adoption of the plan and the nice affordable housing plan.
Thank
I'll
you. Is there a
second it.
second? Thank you. And we can do a roll call vote. Commissioner Macbeth, I vote yes. Commissioner Coleman,
Aye.
Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner Fiero, Commissioner Linick,
Yes.
Commissioner Montgomery, Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner Surface,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ventrone.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Passes unanimously. So thank you again to the applicant for your time and for briefing us again. And look forward to hopefully the county board adopting this next week.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good evening.
Great. Do people need a 5-minute break, or are we good to move forward?
Keep going.
Okay, we'll keep going. Next agenda item is the FY 2027 budget. So I know last time you all walked through the analysis that I put together. I know there were some points of confusion. I'm not sure how much clarity people have gotten since then. But I did want to make sure that people were aware that the county manager is proposing that for housing grants, that in addition to capping the program, that they also no longer allow youth aging out of foster care to be eligible for the program. And the rationale stated in the budget was that there were only like 3 youth that used it, so there was no need to keep that. I think that's a terrible rationale for cutting it, because that's 3 youth who were able to afford living in Arlington and maybe otherwise would not have. So I think that's actually a good reason to keep it, because it's impacting relatively few people, so it's relatively cheap to keep that eligibility criteria in place. But also, I think I shared with the full commission, I had sent kind of an informal email to the county board ahead of the housing budget work session that happened, was it March 13th, maybe? It was early in the month. And
March 18th.
March 18th. Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure that even though we were no longer invited to testify at that meeting, which I still think is a slap in the face to all the commissions, that we were excluded from being a part of that discussion, that the board said, we want to hear from staff, but we don't want to hear from the commissions until we've already made up our mind what we're going to do with the budget. And we were invited to participate with all the commissions last night. I boycotted that session because I've been talking to the board for the last month. And the board members also candidly told me that all the major decisions have basically been made when it comes to the budget. So sorry to the commissions that wasted their time last night, in that session, but I very much disagree that the board changed that process. I think it shows that the commissions are not highly valued by our board members. And I think that's the wrong approach. But like I said, I think it was helpful that I was able to send kind of some thoughts, even though they weren't officially approved. But I took what I had recommended to the commission, and then I took what I heard from the discussion during the commission meeting that I wasn't at last month, tried to incorporate those things into it and send those off so they were at least aware of our thoughts going into the work session. And then as I've been talking to county board members throughout the month of March, I've been trying to, reinforce some of those points that were in the email. So were there any other clarification questions or issues from last month that people still had questions about? And I know there's supposed to be a presentation as well. Sorry, I sort of jumped the gun there, but um, yeah. Any like questions that either we can answer now or have staff answer as part of the presentation? Okay.
Yeah,
So now I will turn
Callan,
over to staff.
Callan,
Oh, go ahead.
on the voucher, on the Forster thing, I tend to agree with you. I think HUD has a special allotment for Forster that the appropriators just did. So I don't know if that impacts it. Plus, on the voucher study that we were just briefed on, there is a preference for people going out of Foster. So maybe, with all due respect to the county board, they may be a little remiss there. So, but maybe it will resolve itself down the line. But I do think I did hear that HUD proposed, or the appropriation proposed, more vouchers for foster care.
My understanding is that most of the youth aging out of foster care were covered through other ways, like other than through this specific eligibility criteria for housing grants, but that there were still a few that were not. And to me, that means then we shouldn't get rid of it. I mean, they just piloted it, what, 2, 3 years ago is when they first introduced that.
Mhm.
And that was one of the only eligibility expansions that they did after the housing grant review. Um, and now they're looking at capping the program, and so I feel like it's moving in the wrong direction. But we can talk about that more after CPHD gives their presentation. But yes, and Alice, do you mind holding your question or comment until after the presentation? Okay, great. Sorry, go ahead, CPHD staff or Marie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marie Randall. I am the finance supervisor for the housing division. And I am here, let's see. Okay, great. Here we go. Whoops. All right, I have got to, I'm sorry, I have to move this. There we go. All right. So we gave this, as Kellen had said before, we did this presentation back on March 18th, and it was combined with DHS, which is how we typically do it. So Anita Friedman went first, and then Ann Venezia went second. So I have stripped down the presentation to just have housing's information in it, and I've also tried to shorten it just a little bit because some of the references would not, without the DHS information, is probably not relevant. But you did hear from Caleb today, so you do know a lot about what we're talking about. So first of all, here, let's see. There we go. As you know, we work very closely with DHS. So the committed affordable units that are, partially created with our AHIF dollars, provide a supply of units for housing grants, the Permanent Supportive Housing Program, also HCV, and then the supportive services include housing-focused case management, financial support, including eviction prevention, and utility and security deposit assistance. So in order for housing to be stable, you have CAFs, you have grant subsidies, and you have the supportive services. So this slide is a new slide that we had this year. And basically what it is showing is that this is from a study that the county worked with George Mason University to complete. So it's a latest 5-year housing needs analysis for Arlington. So this enabled county leadership and staff to understand current trends and future housing needs for residents. So key takeaways on this is that Arlington has more than 19,000 renter households with incomes under 60% of AMI. And so that would be about $98,000 for a family of 4. Additionally, there are more than 16,000 renter households with incomes under 60% of AMI, or those renter households with incomes under 60% of AMI are housing cost burdened. And they pay more than half of their income towards housing costs. The housing needs assessment also identified a shortfall of 8,796 affordable rental units for households with incomes under 50%. There's some other data on that slide, but basically showing that, you know, our needs are much greater than what we're able to provide in Arlington. So I will continue. This is a slide I'm sure you all have seen many times. This is how AHIF sort of works. We are a mission-driven lender with the goal of creating and preserving committed affordable units. Our AHIF is used as residual receipt or cash flow loans. And as of FY25, we've approved 126 loans with about 651 million allocated. We've received 170 million in loan repayments so far, and 43% of the loans that were out there have been paid in full. The FY27 recommendations are in the box. There's 12.8 million in ongoing AHIF plus federal home dollars and Columbia Pike TIF for all of the county funded projects that are in our pipeline. And this to show you what the funding history has been over the past couple of years. In FY23, it was almost $19 million. In FY24, it was about 15.2. FY25 was 21. And this year this year the adopted was a little over $12 million. So these funds include, again, the combination of ongoing general funds, one-time general funds, and federal home funds. And the $10.3 million proposed for FY 2027 is composed of general funds and federal home funds. The bigger numbers or the larger numbers that are on the chart are mostly because of one-time funds that were available that were appropriated to housing for different projects, specifically Barcroft, and paying down that debt. Moving on, here we go. Again, this is also a slide that you've seen before that has been updated. It basically shows where the FY27 budget is, the sources are coming from. So again, general fund is about 9.7. This is steady from last year. Columbia Pike TIF revenue at about 2.5 million. Loan repayments and payoffs of about 3.5 million, developer contributions of about 2 million, and then federal home dollars minus the admin dollars. So that's about $600,000 for total project sources of 18.3 million. As you know, we're paying debt service. So Barcroft debt service is at this point about $5.8 million annually. And then BV3 debt service, which we have been paying for years, is 1.8 million. So we will be paying about 7.6 million in debt service. So there will be about 10.7 million for additional projects that are in our pipeline. Again, another slide that you've seen before, it's our CAF production. And this is just showing what we've been able to do in the past, let's see, since FY23, and what we're proposed to do this year and next year. We have increased between FY20 and FY25. FY20 has fallen off, but we increased our CAFs from approximately 8,700 to over 12 or to almost 12,000 CAFs. Again, Barcroft was a big part of that. And then during the last 5 years, so FY21 through FY25, the county produced and preserved an average of 660 committed affordable units annually as a direct result of our AHIP financing. Next slide. So this is how we are supporting our aging properties. As you know, we have a whole team that monitors the health of our affordable properties through physical inspections and compliance reviews, which means that we, look at their budgets, their audits, as well as we confirm that they are providing the tenants that are in those units are within income limits that are set by the programs. So similarly to in previous years, the FY 2027 budget includes $150,000 for CPHD for inspections and $100,000 for DHS. Both of those are in ongoing funds. CPHD has been doing about 2,000 third-party inspections and other oversight support for CAFs only. DHS has done about or will do about 1,750 third-party inspections, as well as about 1,300 anticipated staff-led inspections for marks and CAFs. And we expect to have to reinvest or, to reinvest in our aging portfolio in future years when those properties refinance or do something else with their properties. And then the final slide from housing. So this slide is a new slide this year, and it shows that when we are comparing our anticipated needs for preservation projects and new supply between now and 2036, so basically 10 years, anticipated resources during the same time period, keeping everything constant that we have right now, represent only 25% of what we think we'll need. So this is due to the increasing demands to reinvest in our aging housing stock, as well as extend affordability commitments to retain what we have now, while also trying to grow our supply in a modest level, so about 2 to 250 net new CAF units. These pressures aren't unique to Arlington. Jurisdictions across the Commonwealth, even the nation, are experiencing similar pressures with increasingly contained resources. We are trying to respond by exploring new strategies to further leverage county resources, largely under the Housing Arlington initiative. And no, we don't believe any one sector can solve the affordable housing challenge alone. And we're part of our Housing Arlington work is finding new partners and new ways to engage with existing partners to further leverage increasing limited public funds. Still, the delta shown on the slide is great and will demand a lot of creativity and coordination with staff and county leaders to ensure that Arlington can continue to provide housing that is affordable to all of its residents. And that is the end.
You, I did have one quick question before we go into public comment on this.
Sure.
This last slide, was this part of the presentation to the board
Yes.
as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So
For
if
some
you
reason, I
look,
didn't remember that. Yep.
yeah, it comes, in fact, a couple board members also during their comment period talked about it. So, it's a
Yeah, I
pretty
remember there was a lot of discussion about this topic, but I didn't, yeah, for some reason I didn't remember the slide, but okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I think moving to public comment, Alex, is it just Alice or do we have other folks?
I do not believe Alice signed up, but Alice, were you planning to speak on this
Good
item?
evening. Yes, I did request to be on the budget
Okay, let me
testimony
pull
list.
that up.
Is that okay? Okay.
It is okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm Alice Hogan with Navajo, Arlington, Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance. I know most of you. It's good to be with you this evening. I just wanted to commend all the work that you all are doing on the budget this year. It's an extremely difficult budget year. And a lot of the programs that your body oversees are, on the chopping block. So I wanted to affirm, all the categories that you had in your analysis. I did want to say that on the foster youth, I did speak with Nicole Dude about that, and she said that all of the folks, if I understood her correctly, all of the folks who would have applied would have qualified under that pilot program had other categories that also helped them apply. So I did not hear her saying that anyone was not provided a housing grant. So I hope that's correct. And then on the housing grant itself, other nonprofits and service providers in the community are asking for a phased-in approach to both the cap and the funding reduction. And I didn't notice that in you all's document. I thought I would just mention it because the nonprofits, it's an ecosystem. If this particular tool gets taken out, they're going to have to figure out a lot of other things. And there's the federal pressure, lower coming from the feds. So they feel like it's July 1 is really fast to do this if it happens at all. So you might want to consider requesting a phase in. Also, the housing locator position, there were 2 at DHS and 1 was grant funded. The grant ran out, so they now have 1 person on staff. Last year, there was 2 folks placed 200 individuals out of shelter or transitional housing into permanent housing. And so with all the upheaval we think we're going to see, it's down to half that staff. It's really problematic for that 1 person. Also, there's a principal planner position that's vacant right now and is proposed to be eliminated. Again, so much going on in planning, housing, economic development, everything. So not a great time to lose a high-level position like that. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention that, and I don't know the answer to this, but it's an outstanding question about the Columbia Pike TIF, the Tax Incremental Finance or Fund, is usually used to pay off the Barcroft debt service. So the question in the community right now is, what is the minimum, and maybe Marie Randall, maybe you know this, but is there a minimum debt service payment on the Barcroft loan that would utilize less of the Columbia Pike TIF that difference could be put in to something else, housing grant or AHIF or what have you. So those are my comments for right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Marie, did you have a response about the
Yeah.
TIF?
So the difference, I'll just say the Barcroft debt service, it was a line of credit. So it's a variable interest rate right now. They are working to lock that in. Interest rates are really high. They're sort of coming down.
Yeah.
And just as a difference, the BV3 debt service is set. It's been, locked in. So that will always remain the same. They are thinking, the DMF is thinking that the Barcroft debt service, they are going to get that into a permanent, not just a line of credit debt. So it will have a straight interest rate, but I don't, 5.8 is the lowest we've seen. I don't know if you remember, it was like 7.8 and, it's gone down over the years. So I'm not sure how much lower it's going to be able to go before they lock it in. But they are working on that right now.
I guess my question, just to clarify, was that I think in past budgets, the last few years, they tried to overpay, remember, to get the to chip away at the principal of it, to bring the principal down. And I heard people saying, and others were asking, if there were overpayments then, what is the minimum that the county could pay this year, and would there be a differential? But are you saying that the 5.8 million is like a required payment? There's no, you cannot
Right.
go
So
lower.
so those payments, so the debt was at 150, it is at 120 million.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no proposed money that is going to pay it down anymore. So
Okay.
that right now is what the interest rate would be on that debt, or that would be the interest payment on that debt, as it is. But again, they're watching, they watch the markets a lot. So they're watching things, fluctuate, and they hope to get, a lower interest rate.
Thank you so much.
Maria, I also had a question. I think 2 years ago, the county board had added, it was either 1 million or 1.5 million specifically for 30% of AMI units in AHIF. Is that money spent? Is it still there waiting for the right project, or what?
Yeah,
What's
it's
the
still
status of
there.
that?
You're right, and it's still there, and it's basically waiting for the correct project.
Okay. And I know in the NOFA process that has already begun, I don't know what stage it is right now, for AHIP for this fiscal year and I guess next fiscal year. Um, Part of the benefit of doing the NOFA is to figure out what is the sort of need of all the different potential projects. But I didn't realize that certain projects were excluded from applying for the NOFA because they needed too much money. So it was, I think, what, 12 million? If you needed 12 million or less, you could apply for the NOFA. But if you needed more than that, then you couldn't. Because I know like the project, the True Ground project near Langston Boulevard. I'm blanking on the name of it right now.
Lucky Gardens.
Lucky?
There we go, Lucky Gardens. Their need was greater than what the cap was, so that's not going to be included. Is CPHD, are you still tracking those other projects? Because I feel like we want to know what that universe is too, that like, oh, there's even greater need than the projects who were even allowed to apply for the NOFA. Because we want to have that information, that data to say, okay, what should AHIF, and maybe that went into that calculation of like, you know, AHIF at the trend where or the rate we're going can only meet 20% of the actual need. But yeah, it'd be helpful to know, are you capturing that data elsewhere?
So that's a great question, and I'll jump in, Marie, real quick. So we, in addition to that, we did have a project information form because you're right, we do want to know the full universe out there of projects, and so projects that were ineligible due to the amount of funding were asked to submit a project information form, which is not as extensive as a NOFA application. It's much more basic, but does contain the information that we are looking for in helping us develop a pipeline. So those were available for people to submit, and so that we did kind of get that full picture.
Okay. It seems like we're entering an environment where we're potentially like getting site plan approval for these 100% affordable housing projects that may never get built because they won't be able to find the gap funding to make it happen. Any thoughts from staff on that? Does that sound like that's sort of potentially where we're headed?
I mean, I can just say, I mean, I think there has always been that that tension that, you know, there could, it just, you know, it depends how they score, how, you know, their tax credits, what the tax credit pricing is. So I think there's a lot more tension because tax credit pricing has gone down as well. So, you know, it's a full, you know, there's many sources of funding, and typically, you know, it's tax credit, it's, you know, it's the first mortgage, it's us, it's, you know, so there's a lot of shifting going on. So I would say, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say characterize it that way. I think the, you know, the situation right now is, you know, is definitely more, you know, more, you need a lot more tools and you need a lot more options to be able to get those projects over the finish line. And again, I don't think it's Northern Virginia. I don't think it's Arlington. I think it's all over. And Alex, I don't, you know, if you want to chime in, but that's, I think, what's happening right now.
Do we know if Amazon's Housing Equity Fund is still active, and if they're still working with local DMV, like affordable housing developers to fund projects? Because I know obviously Barcroft like wouldn't have happened without Amazon's contribution, and there's a number of other projects that they've contributed to. Is that still happening, or is that money kind of done?
And Alex, you can jump in. From what I know, and you know, I'm just a little bit removed from development. It's still active. You know, they're looking for certain projects. They're looking for certain, you know, dates that those projects will completed. You know, they have their requirements as well. But you know, from what I know, it's still very active.
Um, sorry, want to open it up to questions for CPG staff from any of the commissioners? No questions. I have some more updates. Um, from my conversations with board members, which mainly focus on housing grants, um, and the cap, it seems like there's not complete agreement yet on how to move forward, although it does sound like at least some of the board members are planning to support the cap and they feel like the program is growing too big, too fast, and the county can't support it. Um, there seems to be some other board members who are feeling like if we're going to spend money on pick a random project that there's a lot of controversy over, potentially not being funded going into next year, but then we're going to cap housing grants and potentially kick people out of the program, so that they may no longer be able to afford to live in Arlington. That seems like our priorities may not, be focused on the most vulnerable people in our community. Um, so I I don't know exactly what the board's going to decide to do. As Alice said, there's a push among a lot of the nonprofits to urge sort of a delay, or like a phased approach, which to me sounds like they're just sort of assuming the county board is going to do this, that it can't be avoided, and instead of asking them not to do it, they're asking them to make the blow to low income families softer. I still think that we should say, no, you shouldn't cap this program. It should be open to people who need it. If people need it more now than ever, that's when you spend more on the most vulnerable people in your community. That's not when you pull back and say, sorry, we can't afford to spend money on you, when our economic situation is crappier in our community. Um, so I very much think that we should stick with um, that recommendation that was discussed at the last meeting to encourage the board not to cap the housing grant program, and to also continue to include eligibility for foster youth. If there's one thing that I have learned from working with, especially folks who are unhoused and trying to get them in through the intake process and get them help through county services, it is so hard to make that happen successfully. And there's so many people who do not get into the system, for so many reasons, or they hit a barrier because the county's not sure if they're eligible for something. And rather than spend hours and hours and hours collecting all the paperwork that's needed to prove it, they say, you know what, I'm going to live out of my car, or I'm going to just hope for better days ahead, but this isn't worth it. So I think having as many options for folks who are in vulnerable positions like that to be eligible for a program, so the county can say, oh, if we're not sure if you meet eligibility here, there's two other ways that we can get you in to get this help. I think that's a much better way to do it, rather than say, let's close off one avenue, because we think these people are covered on, through other criteria or other programs. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, just two, well, one to a point I wanted to make, the other one was a question. The first to kind of piggyback off what you're saying is generally cheaper to keep someone who is unhoused in housing services than to have them become homeless once again, and then that becomes its own expense. So if the county is worried about fiscal responsibility, which is a significant and real concern right now, I think having a program which prevents homelessness rather than having to expend resources on the back end is the more efficient and wiser thing to do. But the second question, just to ask staff about what possible outreach has the county board made to you regarding um, novel funding structures to try to make up the difference for some of these gaps. To understand that there are areas where the county is saying that this is not fiscally responsible or feasible right now, but it seems like in the midst of everyone trying to advocate for their important pet project, a lot of these services which are incredibly critical for just one's day-to-day well-being are being kind of shunted off to the corner. So it would really be helpful for me to understand what things the county is doing to try to find those pockets of money where they do exist.
So are you asking me? I'm just making sure.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. So I think a lot of what you're talking about is more on the DHS side, if I'm following. They would have to, I don't know what their conversations with the board or the county manager's office have been. So, I would hope, Nicole, I know is on, it comes frequently but that I would direct those questions to DHS.
Green, is there, I think Brian's question could also be applied to AHIF. And are there like novel funding sources that the county board has talked about or asked staff to look into related to, AHIF funding as well?
Well, so there are, I mean, again, Housing Arlington, that's their, that's going to be their goal is to, see about what other options there are. I mean, I think there's a lot of other things besides just funding. There's the whole, if there's free land, if, working with churches as we have. So there's a lot of different options. So I think the answer is I think there's a lot on the table right now, and if there's been any specific conversations, I have not, been in those, but I think it's there's everybody's talking about a lot, and a lot of different options in order to figure out different ways of doing what we do. But I haven't been, I haven't been in any very super specific conversations about about funding or different types of funding. I think it has to be a bigger scope. I think again, there have to be more partners and how to leverage all those partners, to make it successful.
I'm sorry, I guess to my earlier question, that was what I was trying to get at. In addition to funding sources, you mentioned free land, you mentioned different scope related aspects beyond funding that the county should pursue. Have they been in conversation with you about looking into those? Is that something that you can speak to? I'd just like to get a better sense of, what efforts have the county tried to exhaust in getting to this point, or are we at a level where we're just kind of putting up our hands and saying, this is where we are, we can't do anymore?
No, I don't think it's that at all. But there are a lot of things that are happening that, have not maybe happened yet. Again, through the lens of Housing Arlington and all of those aspects that they are going to look at and they are going to review and they are going to, talk to different people and look at different, how different jurisdictions are doing things, and any of that could be, we also, or that could be beneficial for Arlington. There are financial tools that, that are not just county funding that will be reviewed. We, put together a bunch of information about those, but, this was 5 or 6 years ago, or even 6 or 7 years ago now, and then COVID hit and those sort of went out the window. So there's a lot of things that are very in the moment that, are good options. And so those are all being reviewed again, but, that's going to start in FY27.
And
Thank
I
you.
would just add on to Marie's point. There was some financial tools work done under the Housing Arlington umbrella a few years ago. I'll send that link out, but it for the whole commission, but it identifies the challenges that we have. It identifies policy goals, and then it has a number of strategies to expand and rethink county resources. So I'll share that with the commission over email now, just so you can have that link available.
Alex, Joe, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
I just want to associate myself to what Brian said. Marie's last slide was a little chilling, extremely chilling. And, Arlington, I think we're spoiled. People look at things, think we're doing well and stuff like that, but that chart is chilling. So I associate myself with what Brian said, and I don't want to belabor this. The last meeting, I suggested some creative language, that the county board look at creative ways. And this was more for staff. And I'm saying this, some of you know what I'm talking about. There's a development in Roslyn called Crestmont. And the developer is proposing 120 TDRs that would go to AHC. It is really a way of creating more money for development. We're doing a lot of development in Arlington, and there's developers would probably pay, not in that specific area, but contribute money for other areas. And the other thing I'm really confused about, I don't know why, and we have DHS, and then we have the housing department. And the young man that briefed us on vouchers, I mean, I always thought vouchers would be in the housing department, but it's in human services, et cetera. Luckily, Marie, you guys talked to each other, and I did see clips of the March 18th where Ann and everyone was sitting together. But we just have problems. And I think we really have to be creative. I mean, extremely creative. So I can't stress that enough. And I hope it gets filtered to the board and to the staff. Thank you.
Joe, Jason? Jason, you might be frozen.
Just, I believe that the guidance from the county board to manager on this budget was to prioritize. Oh, hear me? Testing.
Jason, you're cutting out. Maybe try turning off your video. Can't hear you if you're talking. Yeah. Jason, Alex, there's a call-in link, right?
There is a call-in number. Sometimes if you leave and come right back in, that also can work.
Okay.
You can hear us.
Did anyone else have a question while we wait for Jason to come back in? Jason, do you want to try speaking?
Testing.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna. I know I keep my camera off. Sorry if yeah, I think the guidance given to the county manager this year was to focus on equity, underprivileged, like human services, and I think from the DHS budget, it looks like for the most part the cuts were not as much, or in some instances were slightly increased, but seeing the CPHD budget and of course some of the things go down is concerning, and I think that it's kind of, if you look at the long term, is like, well, based on the thinking, it's like with the revenue side as well, it's like, okay, what taxes go up per year? So it's like, usually from what I saw in the budget was that, oh, well, one year you do, the meals tax, and the next year you do the property tax. You kind of like, keep going, because you can't do like back to back. But we're getting to a point now where it's like we're starting to, we're going to need to start doing back to back increases or other things, because we're not recovering the way we should, or other things. So that is a long-term risk for these programs that we want to keep. And to highlight with the foster youth, I think it's definitely important that we're still investing in the youth. I know there's you look at not only local, state, and national, but like there's definitely underinvestment, systemic underinvestment that's not happening for youth. And I think that it's happening because they don't vote at the same rates, they don't have the same organizing power, and that is concerning, because as a demographic, we see in Arlington, the percentage of kids under the age of 5 is down 20% over the last decade. The percent of people on the age of 25 to 34 is down 6% over the last decade. You see these growing demographics that don't have the base of support anymore, and it becomes harder to support anyone in these categories, because they're not as they can't organize for localized projects with amenities that are felt very acutely versus, as Brian said, the broad base, so yeah, there's going to need to be some thought about that long term. How do we get durable things that can't just be, quietly taken away while, more higher profile things, physical assets or other things that people use or consider as a amenity, those are harder to do. And then that's pretty much the discretionary budget besides, staffing and other, schools and other things which are, you really can't do. There's not as much wiggle room. So, yeah, it's just, you got to find, we have to get creative, but I think you got to get durable things because the creativity window keeps shrinking and because when you lose the leverage. So, yeah, it's just very challenging, but I do think that, youth investment is really key and can't lose sight of people that don't have acute voices speaking up for them. So that's some thoughts.
Jason. Yeah, and I know in the recommendation, the fourth recommendation around AHIF that I had put in the email to the county board, that was really the focus of it is, I mean, and we've heard this from DHS that I think everyone is aware we're moving in the wrong direction when it comes to homelessness in our community. Which is frustrating because we had a plan, what, 2, 3 years ago to end homelessness in Arlington, and now it's worse. Not because our plan was bad or, our staff are not doing a good job, but because the need has grown and we don't have affordable housing to put people in. They don't have anywhere to go after they leave the shelter because we don't have enough CAFs. And we don't have enough CAFs that are affordable at 30% of AMI. And that is a big challenge that 2 years ago, the county board set aside some money. I'd like to, Marie, learn more about like under what conditions is that going to be spent? And how does that play into like the site plan negotiations for community benefits that like, is that presented as an option of like, hey, can we uh, or I guess no, that wouldn't be part of the benefits negotiations. But yeah, just where does that come into play, and how does that money get spent on 30% of AMI units? Because if it's been sitting for a couple of years, it'd be good to know when do we plan to spend this money to help the people it's supposed to help. Because if we're asking them to put more money aside for that, it'd be helpful to know why we haven't spent the money that we set aside like 2 years ago. And I'm sure there's a good reason, and it probably has to do with development cycles and all the other stuff. But that would be really helpful if you all could provide some information to us after this meeting about when staff plan to have that spent or under what circumstances that would actually be spent. But yeah, I think that's something we have to keep reminding our elected leaders that we're not going to have less homeless people unless we have more deeply affordable housing for people to live in our community. The other two recommendations that were on sort of the list, the second one, prioritize fast, no-cost housing affordability solutions. So this one, asked the county board to really make sure that staff is focused on if we don't have more money or we have less money, what can we do that's relatively cheap to address housing affordability? Specifically, we talked about the definition of family and the huge frustration that it seems like everyone in county government agrees we should change it, but yet it might take a year or more to change it. And the county board's on board, staff's on board, everyone seems to be on board, but it's not changing. And making sure things like that don't keep happening. This thing that could make life more affordable for people in Arlington, but it just sits there and doesn't get implemented. One of the other potential areas, and I don't know if we want to include this in our recommendation or our letter. So I've been talking to DHS staff around the permanent supportive housing program. And so there's units, and this is actually another thing for CPHD that would be helpful to know, that apparently we have units that have been set aside for permanent supportive housing, but we don't have the staff, the support staff needed to have those units become permanent supportive housing units. So they end up just becoming regular CAF units, which is not bad in the sense that they're still affordable units, but it is bad in the sense that for folks who need those extra services to help them stay housed, they're getting less of that, and there's less places for them to live in our community because DHS doesn't have enough staff to provide those services. And I'd ask the question of, if you got like two more staff people to support the PSH program, how many more units would you be able to add? And the question or the answer was, we're so short staffed that doesn't even give us more units. That just helps us like not burn out our existing employees as fast. But one of the things that we talked about was for affordable housing providers like True Ground and AHC and Wesley, and I think True Ground has explored this, providing their own wraparound services for permanent supportive housing units. And I'd actually reached out to the leadership of HC and True Ground. And actually, Danny, I haven't heard back from Carmen. And I haven't heard back from HC either. So you guys are not alone. But it'd be really great to have a conversation about what type of county support would be needed for our affordable housing providers to start providing more of these wraparound services for residents, like the county has done for permanent supportive housing, so that we can fully utilize all of the units that have been set aside for that, but just haven't had the support staff to make it happen. So again, I don't know if that's something we want to include in this, this recommendation, this letter. But I definitely think it's something that we should try to get some more information on and look into as a way that, maybe it's not adding county staff and resources, but there are things that the county may be able to do to help our partners, our affordable housing partners, expand these programs. Any thoughts about that?
From staff, just
Oh,
confirm.
no, sorry, from
Okay,
commissioner. I
sorry.
mean, if you have comments, you're welcome to share.
No, I think that sounds good. I would second that, and look forward to seeing any language for a letter that we can contribute and send to the county board for this. So, glad to hear any other feedback from the rest of the commission.
The third recommendation then was around fair housing enforcement. So I think I'm trying to think back to what you all discussed at the last meeting. So the county manager has not frozen the head position for the Office of Fair Housing. I was really afraid that he was going to. I think there was pressure from outside and from the board not to do that. So that position has not been frozen. It has not been filled. It has not been advertised. So it may not be officially frozen in the budget, but it also, I have no idea when the manager plans to fill it. But I think that's a win, because there was talk about getting rid of that position and downsizing the office, which I think is the opposite direction that we've been pushing them to go. But there are other recommendations, in the email that I'd sent and what I'd shared with the commission around steps that the existing staff can take to do more to support fair housing. And that includes, like we spoke with them in December around when they do testing and they find cases of potential discrimination, to refer those to the Virginia Fair Housing Office for consideration, so that they can address those and, use the enforcement process to hold landlords accountable if they are discriminating. And I know the way that it was talked about in December was that, well, it's potential discrimination, it's not discrimination. That's just the technical term. That doesn't mean that it's not still a case of discrimination. It is until, the Fair Housing Office has gone through the adjudication process and decided that, yes, we think discrimination has happened here, but it's all potential until that point. Um, so I think that's something that we should encourage them to do. We should encourage them to invest in outreach and education to ensure residents know their rights and landlords and property owners understand their responsibilities. So the additional, I think 35,000 that the board gave to the Office of Fair Housing, or sorry, the Office of Human Rights to do more outreach is continued in this budget. So that's a good sign. But I think we want to continue to encourage them to do more than they are doing, because just there's so many people in Arlington who have no idea what the rights are. And I hear from people all the time about cases of potential discrimination and they don't know what to do about it. Um, so we need to do a better job there. Um, and then changing the human rights ordinance to make sure that the Office of Human Rights has the full authority to do what they should be doing. Doesn't cost them any money. That is a change they could make without adding to the budget. They just need to do it. So I think making that ask again, this is a good time to do it. To make a positive impact on the community to fight housing discrimination that won't cost them more money. So those are the 4 recommendations that I'd included in the email that I sent to the board and then sent out to the housing commissioners. Are there additional things, or are there things on there that people don't want to include? Thoughts on what should go in our official letter?
Yeah, hey, Kellen, I sent you and Alex, I believe, language that kind of verbalizes what Brian just said. I can't find it. I don't know if Alex can find it. I'll look for it. But if we could add that to the recommendation, because that gets to the creative ways of looking at things and blah, blah, blah. I don't know, but I sent it to you and Alex soon after you sent us the proposed things. Or maybe it was after the Brian meeting last month. I forget, but I just can't find it. But it was, I'll try and find it and resend it. I don't know if you have
Okay,
it.
if you wanna explain a little bit more about it, because I do think that like we want to get this letter out ASAP because, like I said, the board has already made a lot of the really big decisions when it comes to the budget. It's already late in the process. I wish we had this vote and determined what officially what our priorities were in March and for next year. I hope we don't wait till April because I think it's too late. But yeah, Joe, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, just so people know, what they're voting on.
Yeah, it's basically what Brian said, that the county, the board and the staff should look at creative ways to look at other options for to get revenue to assist our mission. But it's basically, and I'll try and find it. I mean, I just can't find it.
Oh, Alex has it up on the screen.
Okay. Okay, no, okay, there it is. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Alex. Okay. Yeah, you'll see the quote. The Housing Commission encourages the county to explore flexible and yeah, right there.
Okay, thoughts from commissioners on this language? I don't have an issue with it.
Can you slip this into the low cost recommendation you have? I don't have the language in front of me, but is there a way to combine the two? Because it feels like they're similar in concept.
I agree. Yeah, I think this could be a part of that recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex, are you able to bring up those recommendations from my email? Okay. I made a little bit of change to these in the email that I sent out to everyone, but they're very similar. But this, just what you have in front of you now doesn't incorporate the changes from the last March commission meeting that I made.
I can look for a more updated version in my email. 1 second.
And actually, I can just forward it to you because I have it up too.
Helen, is the occupancy thing in there? Do you have the occupancy thing where you mentioned the Golden Girls model?
Yes, that's
Okay,
that's
good.
in there.
Good.
Yep,
Thank
I
you.
specifically call out Golden Girls.
Good.
Alex, I just forwarded it to you.
Okay, great. I will pull it up 1 second.
Thank you. Yeah, so I had added this would especially benefit elderly residents who are unrelated but wish to live together to save money. For example, Golden Girls.
All right.
And then I also included that we invite the county to work with the Housing Commission this year to explore and implement other policy changes, because this was also a frustration that I expressed to the board when they some of the board members had brought up that we really need to rethink our spending when it comes to these safety net social services, and we got to make sure that we have a sustainable path forward. I was like, you have a housing commission. Like, we are here to think through those types of things and advise you on it. Like, please come to us and use us for that. So I think this should stay in here, but I also think they took that recommendation to heart, because when we talk about the formation of our subcommittees, they actually gave us a charge related to the housing innovations for housing affordability one. So I was very excited to see that. I think maybe 2 days ago, Maureen had sent me an email saying, we've been talking among board members and staff, and here's what we'd like the Housing Commission to focus on when it comes to housing affordability this year. So we'll talk about that after this agenda item. Thoughts from folks on these recommendations and adding in Joe's language to the second one? Okay, is there a
I
motion
don't have any
to?
issues with it.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this?
So moved.
Second.
Is there? Thank you. I'll do roll call. Commissioner Macbeth votes yes. Commissioner Coleman,
Aye.
Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner Linick,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner Surface,
Yes.
Commissioner Ventrone,
Yes.
and hopefully I didn't miss anyone.
Alex,
Okay.
hold on. It's Commissioner Montgomery. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Sorry. Yes, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, aye.
awesome. Thank you. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you all. So, do people need a break? Are we good for the next item? Okay, let's keep going. So our next agenda item is the subcommittee formation. And there's actually two subcommittees that I would like to form. One, Nikki, I apologize in advance for not having talked to you, but I'd like to kick off our legislative priority subcommittee because the county board does want our legislative priorities in July instead of September. So I think we should kick off our process earlier, given that they want our recommendations months earlier. And Nikki, I don't know if you plan to chair that subcommittee again, but happy to have you do that if you're willing to. If anyone else would like to, be in leadership of that subcommittee too, feel free to speak out now as well.
Yeah, happy to, but also, yeah, if anyone else would like to, I know I've done it for a few years. I don't want to keep folks who would like a turn.
Okay, and who would like to be on that subcommittee besides Nikki and myself? Joe? Okay. Anyone else? Jason? Okay. Okay. Sounds good. And other people can, join once we like kick off the meetings and things, but that seems like a good group for right now. Any other questions about the legislative subcommittee? Okay, cool. The next subcommittee is the one that I had talked about at the beginning of the year, and we just got direction from the county board. Alex, are you able to bring up the charge that Maureen sent, the attachment? Thank you. And they changed the acronym, and so I'd like to change it back to IFAS with an S instead of IFA. I like IFAS better, so I would put subcommittee as part of the acronym. And instead of a scope of work, I think charter is the language that we use consistently. But this is something, and I apologize because I meant to send this out to folks ahead of this meeting so people had a chance to review, but the last 2 days have been really crazy. So I barely even had a chance to let Maureen know that, I read it and appreciated her sending this. So essentially the board narrowed down what they want us to focus on. So they want us to work with staff, and this is part of the Housing Arlington initiative, and affordable housing development partners to come up with a short list of recommendations around rules or policies on like housing development that would save, costs for affordable housing projects. This is part of what we initially considered looking at as part of this subcommittee, but it just sort of narrows the focus to that. So it looks like they want to restrict membership just to members of the Housing Commission. I think that's a change from what was in the original proposal. Other people can attend and participate in public comment. And then they sort of laid out a bit of a schedule, but just the first couple meetings would be focused on meeting with affordable housing developers to get their feedback. And I think we need to figure out a way to make sure that developers feel comfortable being honest about the challenges of working with the county, because that's something that I've encountered that um, if it's a closed door meeting that I have with affordable housing development partners, and I agree that I'm not going to attribute anything they say back to them, I get a lot more candid feedback about what could be improved that the county's currently doing than if it's something that's on the record and they feel like the county may get pissed at them. So that is something that I think we want to consider of how to address that, because we want honest feedback. We want to know where the real problems are, not just what they feel it's okay to say publicly to criticize the county. Go ahead, Nikki.
Can we solicit their feedback anonymously, like in the official capacity, but just where they wouldn't be identified?
I think, yeah, probably something like that, or having multiple sets of meetings, some public meetings, and then maybe some private meetings where, it's one or two of us meeting with them. And again, we wouldn't attribute anything they say specifically to that organization. It would just be like, this came from, one of the developers. I guess that's a benefit of having multiple ones. in addition to the public things, because I think we still want to have that public conversation, but also recognize that there's limits on what people are going to feel comfortable saying if they feel like future funds or approval could be at stake if they piss off the wrong person.
Right. Okay.
Let's see. I mean, I think it's basically coming up with here are the top issues that we think should be focused or that the county should be focused on addressing. And okay, so they talk about Virginia's LIHTC, qualified allocation plan, state building code, county policies and practices impacting the development process. So those are the three main areas. I think we could, delve beyond that if things come up. And it says, this is at a minimum, but yeah, we would kick it off this spring. And I know too, I'm working to schedule a meeting with county staff to talk more about, the logistics of how this would work. Brian, are you still looking to chair this subcommittee as well?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I think this is something we can kick off like right away. Assuming the commission agrees that this makes sense to do. I will say, like, again, it is rare that we get specific direction from the county board on what they want us to focus on. And I think it's an awesome opportunity because then anything that we do, we can honestly say we are doing this at the behest of the board because they want this information. They want us to engage in this. And hopefully that will make, working with staff, not that staff aren't always great to work with, but they have competing priorities in their own schedules and to-do lists. So having this be something that the board has worked with staff to say, yes, this makes sense for the Housing Commission to focus on, I think will be really beneficial for us as we engage in this process. And same thing with other folks in the community. Thoughts about this? Questions?
Kellen, I think this is great. I think we should advertise this like crazy, and I hope if Arlington Now is listening, they do an article on this. I think this would send a great message, and it is terrific.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe. Any other thoughts on this? Who would like to join the subcommittee? Joe? Nikki? Jason? Okay, Danny.
I'm definitely interested too. I just recall last time I expressed interest and I had to conflict on like 5 out of the 6 or however many meetings we had, so I wasn't able to attend. So I'm interested, but I caveat that with schedule limitations.
Completely understandable. And I think it's fine for folks who aren't sure if they can commit that you're welcome to come to any of the meetings. And we're not going to say like, oh, if you're not officially on the subcommittee, but you're a housing commission member, like you don't get to speak. Like I think you should get to actively participate. But you just wouldn't get to vote on subcommittee items until they come before the full commission.
That's the same thing for me too, Kellen. This is Commissioner Montgomery.
Okay. Sounds good. And yeah, I'm excited about this and I'm looking forward to working with Brian and the rest of the Housing Commission members on moving this forward. I guess we can officially adopt the charter. We don't have to, but let's do it. Let's make it official. Do I have a motion to adopt this charter?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Great. Any objection? No objection. It is adopted. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is development updates.
Yes, so I will be quick. There's one update, it's Barcroft update. So on April 18th, the county board will consider amendments to 5 Barcroft apartment renovation use permits and conditions to establish consistency across all 7 renovation phase use permits and to bring them into conformance with the phase development use permit, which was approved in July 2025. The amendments also include changing 1 unit in building number 47, which is in the second renovation phase currently under construction, from a 2-bedroom unit to a 1-bedroom unit to address building code requirements. As a result, amendments are also requested to the second renovation phase Arlington County Affordable Housing Investment Fund loan agreement and deed of declaration of restrictive covenants to reflect the unit mix change in building number 47. So basically, just bringing all the use permits into compliance, both from a condition standpoint and just the use permits standpoint so that they're consistent. But that is the only update tonight, and I believe we have full coverage on meetings. So I will send out more SPRC meetings as they come.
Thank you, Alex. Do we have any updates on SPRCs that people have attended?
Joe, Jason, and I attended the special GLUP study on March 18th for the 1401 Langston Boulevard, which is also the old Keybridge Marriott. And it was a the site amendment expired, so the applicant was asking for a special GLUP study, and we voted to go ahead and move forward with the tier 2. I believe tier 1's already in process, and tier 2. So this is a huge development that includes the 10-story hotel and then 5 26 to 29-story residential buildings, with them being built over a phase. So this is a long-term project. One of them is proposed to be a condominium, which makes me excited. And Joe was nice enough to introduce me to the builder, who said he would consider putting some affordable. I mean, it's so early on in the process, but it would be great to have some affordable condos included, although it is kind of a luxury building. Did you want to add something, Joe?
Yeah, it's in my civic association, and we're going to have a general meeting April 29th at 7 or 7:30 at the Hilton. I'll send the invite to you all. You may want to come because the developer for our civic association will do another thing. It's a very ambitious 1,785 units altogether. I will probably be dead by the 6th time the 6th unit is built, but it will be a great gateway to Roslyn. Roslyn is just, when you get off Key Bridge and you see the new J. Revell project, you see the Hilton project, and then when One Ballston is built, it's just going to be phenomenal. It's really going to be great. So thank you, Karen.
Did they talk about where they plan to put the gondola, or did that not come up as part of the discussion?
Don't mention that.
It's disappointing. That's a real missed opportunity for our community and Georgetown.
Yeah, well, it's got mixed emotions over here. And the boathouse is another controversial thing, because one of the community benefits, they will try and do something to coordinate with the boathouse, but the boathouse here is also, as many people like it, a lot of people don't like it either, because to get to it, it's going to be very hard because of GW Parkway. So, but they're making a great public walkway around the project that you can walk and look at the river and look at Georgetown. So the plans are quite attractive.
Thank you. Any other SPRC or Glub study or LRPC updates?
Yeah, I have a question. What happened in Melwood? I wasn't able to go to, I wrote a statement on behalf of the commission. I think Jason went. What happened there? Or Jason, can you give a report? I mean, is the county board taking that up this month or what? On Melwood?
Yeah, so the Millwood went to the preservation. Oh my gosh,
HALRB,
sorry.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
HALRB. They did not vote in favor of the recommendation to designate the entire land area as an historic site, but they did vote to designate the footprint from, I think, that first decade that it was in existence as a site. But that so technically, I believe if the county board does vote that site, then only that area would need to be preserved because there's been multiple additions. I believe it's gonna go to the planning commission next and then county board, but I'm still not 100% sure if it needs to go to the planning commission
Okay.
first.
Thank you.
Do we know what that does to the project? Like how many units get lost or what the impact is?
Well, yeah, it would certainly, it would be a completely different project because if you designate a historic district, then whatever that initial, I think, land area, that means it's under the
Right.
the
Hopefully it won't get approved. Hopefully the county board will counteract it, but
Does that, and
site
that
plan is
doesn't
approved. The
come,
county board did approve the site plan, so
yeah, and that doesn't, Alex, that's not coming back to us at this stage, right? We don't get to
So I
weigh
don't,
in
yeah, I
against the
don't believe,
HILRB.
I'm not sure about that process or this project in that process. I can learn more information though.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you could give us an update on next steps and if there's a role that we can play to encourage the county board to choose housing for people over keeping an old building
right.
old and there. Go ahead, Alice.
Oh, that's all I was gonna say was that this is a recommendation from the HALRB, which was in opposition to the staff report that did not recommend a historic district of any size. But you're correct that, we're told it will go to the planning commission and then to the county board for a vote. So the board does not have to accept the recommendation of the HALRB. So it's not a done deal that way. But I did hear that the portion that Jason was describing that would be, if it were designated, the way that it was built and where it was built, the request for underground parking that the community made to make sure that it wouldn't spill over into the neighborhood would involve an excavation, which would undermine that particular piece. So as far as I understood, if this designation went through, then they don't feel that this project is feasible.
Alex, if it's possible for the Housing Commission to do an action item on this and sort of have staff present or the applicant on the implications of the historic designation, so that we can provide an official recommendation to the county board, that would be helpful.
Okay, I'll look into that.
Thank you. Any other development updates from commissioners or from Alex? Okay. The last item are just subcommittee liaison reports. We lost our SITSAC rep. Does anyone want to become our new SITSAC rep? We'll put a pin in that.
I think you have to have somebody who's on SIDSAC.
So they get appointed from the Housing Commission to SITSAC. So we get a spot on SITSAC.
No, but I think Margaret was on SIDSAC and then she was also
A member?
No,
She
they
was-
added her to SITSAC as
Oh,
the
they did.
Housing Commission
Oh, they
representative.
did.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, they have a spot set aside for Housing Commission rep.
What does it do? I'm not that familiar with it. What's
I think it's mainly overseeing like the HUD grant funding, like home and other programs. So they review applications from community organizations, and then they recommend, who should get the money.
And they do block
Alex,
grants and stuff like that.
yeah. Anything else
No.
you want to add there, Alex?
Yeah, no, you summed it up there. It's mostly around the community development fund and yeah, applications being submitted and scoring those, all of that.
Okay. Well, if someone does, decide that you want to do that, you want to also serve on that commission, please let Alex and I know. Next item, C2E2. We also don't have a rep for C2E2 anymore, but we do have our climate action plan advisory group rep. Jason, any update there?
Yeah, but just a note, a bit of frustration is that the meeting is scheduled, kind of the three things that were like I couldn't think of believe. So it's scheduled in the middle of the day. It was scheduled in person and scheduled in a not, lumber run, not exactly central location, location. So I've inquired about, I mean, seeing if there is going to be an online option or like time, like, not in the middle of the day, where I'd have to like, take off work or whatever. But I mean, I should be able to make this one, but I don't know, like alternate, but it's scheduled on April 20th. But this is an important thing because it's talking about future climate and how it affects housing and all these sorts of things. And it's just like these sorts of, scheduling these commission advisory meetings at these times, dates, locations. It is not, we had an entire thing about community engagement and housing. And like, this is like exactly the opposite of what you do for the future of housing for where we're going to be living in the future. So that was just the thing, but
is that being set by staff or is that like whoever's chairing this determining
I
that?
don't know. I haven't got a response. I need to follow up on the response, but when I got the email that it's going to be at this time and place, I'm like, is this where all the meeting? I was like, wait, are you serious? Like,
Alex, is that also something you can follow up on and express concern on the part of the Housing Commission that we want to be a part of this, but they need to be flexible and account for the fact that we're volunteers who,
Right.
most of us have day jobs?
Yes, I'll look into that and share your concerns. Absolutely.
thank you.
Appreciate that. And then the TLC subcommittee on the human rights ordinance. I have not heard anything. I'll follow up again with the tenant landlord commission. Yeah, I haven't heard anything, so we'll see if next meeting I have an update. And anything that we're missing, or is that it? Okay. Well, if there's nothing else for the group, thank you all for a very productive meeting and look forward to seeing you all again next month. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Have a
Bye.
good night now.